Hello, good day, and welcome to Two Dudes Talk Tattoos, a podcast about tattooing and all things adjacent to tattooing. So awesome, it'll blow the pants right off your rear end. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Othis. You can find me online at bettertattooing.com, the Better Tattooing YouTube channel, or on Instagram at RIAN_OTHUS. My co-host will be missing from this episode this week is Brian Matthew. That's Matthew with one T. You can find him online at Scarlet Veil Tattoo in Corvallis, Oregon, at the Tailored Fit Tattoo Gallery in Rogers, Arkansas, or check out his Instagram and Facebook, Brian Matthew Illustrations, or Brian Matthew Tattoos. This week, we're talking with Anthony Waichulis. A really, really awesome dude, educator, one of the world's best oil painters. He deals mostly in the trompe l'oeil side of artwork, where you are trying to create the illusion of little things kind of all stuck together that, it looks so real, you feel like you can touch it. But if you see one of his paintings, don't touch it, people. Just leave it be and admire it for the fact that this absolutely amazing artist was able to do something like that. And now a word from our sponsors this week. Yeehaw. Ink Master returns with an all-new season on its new home, Paramount Plus. On September 7th, host Joel Madden is joined by judges Nico Hurtado, Ami James, and Ryan Ashley, and guest star Dave Navarro as the Master of Chaos. Watch legendary artists go head-to-head for $250,000 and the champion title. The new season of Ink Master is streaming September 7th exclusively on Paramount Plus. Head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free. All right, now that's over with. Oh my gosh, I just did what I do on my YouTube channel. Anyways, Brian's not going to be with us today, and that sucked, of course, because I know that he was actually looking forward to hanging out with Mr. Anthony and asking questions about art. But because Brian wasn't here, I did what I normally do. I stayed away from art. I wanted to talk more about philosophy. I wanted to talk about education. I wanted to talk about online trolls and logical arguments. Really, really had a good time with Mr. Anthony. I'd love to have some more talks with him in the future, and I think we're actually going to be setting something like that up. So we're going to be getting that in a second. Just an update. Dr. John Swerk, you may remember him from a few shows ago. It looks like he's been starting to publish and release some of his findings regarding the safety and efficacy of tattoo pigments, and it's kind of crazy, some of the things that he's been finding. I'm glad that he finally got the chance to release some stuff and get a couple nods from some pretty prestigious academic places. If you want to know more, I am going to be posting a link to the article that I read, which I believe may have the link to his research as well. If not, you can always head over to his website, what'sinmyink.com, and take a peek yourself. So if you are using a pigment brand right now and you are in the tattoo world, you can be sure that you don't actually know what's in your bottle. So if you want to help out, go to Dr. John's website. Just tell him that we sent you, If you can help, do your best. All right, and now everyone's favorite part of the show, it's time for homework. And I know last week I told everyone just not to piddle on the ground, which I hope that you did it. And I hope it felt good that you didn't make a mess of things. I can tell you my children didn't. We had a couple more accidents, and that's okay, because we're working towards dry carpet, because there's nothing like waking up in the morning and seeing that somebody has come and taken a pee next to your side of the bed as a joke. Anyways, on this week, we've got some real homework. I want everyone out there, if you can, just 5 minutes a day, put down your phone. Just put it down. If you're a tattooer out there, instead of going on break and hopping on your phone and scrolling through all of your social medias trying to see what's hip and what's cool, why don't you go ahead and just purchase a small drawing pad that you can keep in your pocket, and every time you get up to go out and do something, just draw for 5 minutes. Just a quick sketch. We're always behind on everything that we have to do when we're tattooers, so just try it. If you're in college, instead of taking a book and studying and doing something else, find something that's just going to relax you, but don't bury yourself into your cell phone or onto your computer. Just take a break. Go talk to another person in class. Go do something else. I know it's going to be weird for some of the younger people who have extreme societal anxiety, which maybe that's something to work on. Maybe that'd be fun. Maybe you could meet some new people, meet some new friends. Maybe you're just going to find someone who's just an absolute prick that you want to avoid. Whatever it is, let's see if we can put down our cell phones for just a little bit. And hey, if any of you want to take part in the experiment that we're trying to do today, we'd love to hear your feedback. It's twodudestalktattoos@gmail.com. The number 2 is not in there. It's TWO. twodudestalktattoos@gmail.com. Put your phone in black and white mode, everyone. Turn off the color. Just black and white, no color. See how long you can do it. I have been using black and white on and off for about 2 years. And if I sit there and do it and I'm cognizant of it, I will leave my phone on black and white for months on end. I have had a few people attempt to do this, and they have not lasted more than 20 minutes. So, let's see what you can do. Not only take some time to yourself, not on your phone. If you can't do that, if you just can't stop doom scrolling Instagram, put it in black and white and see how it feels. Hey, while you're at it, try to find your favorite app when it's in black and white. That'll blow your mind. Anyways, let's go to the show. This is me, without Brian, talking to Anthony Waichulis. I've had to start the show, so thank you.
Yeah,
I want to remember it. Okay, so yes, sorry.
No, it's just I think that there is a lot of myth that swirls around creativity, and a lot of times people will push off the concepts that there could be objective analysis of this and objective analysis of that in the arts in general. It becomes a very, very difficult conversation to navigate when someone brings up like an objective statement or an objective a claim that appears to be containing some objective judgment or an objective assignment or an objective assignment of meaning or an objective, and everybody loves that label of good, bad. Well, what's better? Well, this is best. And these words are so problematic, but we can make a lot of objective assessments about different creative acts. Once people say, well, everything's all subjective. Well, no, it's not.
It's not Nietzschean.
And it's it's like a game of chess, right? So if you and I are going to engage in a game of chess, the rules of chess are inherently subjective. They are the basic rules are subjective. You and I can make those rules whatever we want. We could follow the rules as they are. We could tweak them, and as long as you and I agree on them, they're the rules. And so that's a subjective foundation. Just like someone might say a piece of art, may have subjective rules to it determined by the artist at the onset of the endeavor. But once you and I agree on what those rules are, and we both agree this is the goal of that, this is the goal of this exercise, this is the goal of this activity, you and I could look at any given move that either of us make, and we could objectively analyze it based on those subjective rules. So you could say this move is better than this move in terms of effectiveness, efficiency, however you want to look at it, whatever type of rubric or criteria you want to use. But the rules of chess are still subjective. So what just because that there's subjective rules laid out for an artistic endeavor, a creative endeavor. Okay, once those rules are known, once the goal, or in the case of a piece of artwork, the intention is clearly defined, can be articulated in some way. Well, now you could start to make objective assessments about, different components that are deployed in that artwork, or, whether or not it was even overall successful. You could say, well, this painting is better than this painting. This tattoo is better than that tattoo. You could say that if there are subjective rules in place that are understood between the parties of, having this a discussion or something like that. But when someone says, oh, well, this tattoo's better than that one. Well, why is that? Well, I just like it. That's useless. Unless you were trying to find a tattoo that was appealing to the individual that made that statement. That was the intention, but otherwise,
that's that negotiation that happens during that conversation, right? This is when you're discussing what is going to be on that rule book, right? Like those limitations. I always thought that rules are just limitations being applied to a subject matter, right? Like as soon as you all agree on those, right? Then you can move forward and start judging shit.
rules. The way I understand a rule, whether you're painting or you're tattooing or you're drawing or any type of visual communication that might fall under the heading of an artistic endeavor. The rules are conventions. They're the conventions that define what that activity is.
Yeah.
I don't like. You could say when somebody says, "Oh, well, they're limitations." Like when there are limitations. That statement is not false. It's a limitation in regard to a convention that's defining the parameters of that activity.
Yeah, I like that. When some people look at language.
When some people look at rules, they hear the word rules, and then there's the concept of a limitation connected to that. They think, oh, well, that's something I'm supposed to go beyond.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where people start getting really tripped up. Like the rules are telling you, okay, this is the what the parameters of this activity are. Like for me to be painting, what's absolutely necessary is paint.
Yeah.
If I don't have paint, I haven't gone beyond the rule of that requirement. Some people will make that argument. I've heard people will say, hey, this person, so-and-so, there was some, who was the actor? There was some actor that was, I think it was James Franco was kind of taking the lead on this project of an imaginary gallery or an imaginary show. And you walked into the room, this space, and there was nothing on the walls, but you could, you could experience this show. It's kind of like, John Cage's, what's that name of that? 4 minutes, 22 seconds. It's supposed to be this really, avant-garde conceptual piece of music, but it's 4 minutes and 22 seconds of silence. Yeah. Well, now, has he gone beyond the rules? Because now, to me, if someone heard that, I don't think they would recognize that as music. You could say it's music by some definition, but I would be quick to retort and say, well, that's not music by the definition that I know most people, use that in the way they're using that term to describe, what they're using that term to describe. That's not it.
Yeah. I like this. This is a fun thought process. Like, like making the claim that humans can't fly is a subjective argument because the person who's jumping off the building sure can fly for a few seconds while the person on the ground is only going to see the splat. One is proof, one is false. I think because it's like the bridge into abstract versus not, right?
That's Arthur Dent in the Hitchhiker's Guide in the series, in the one book, he gives the secret to flying for humans, and it's just you throw yourself at the ground and miss. And I'm a big Douglas Adams fan, so a lot of his
that's great. That's great.
A lot of his writing really resonates with me and has stuck with me since I was very young. So
sweet. It seems like you've studied a lot of like philosophy, I guess, or at least maybe like independently, like started to think about it or process it from like maybe not through academia, of course.
Yeah, and it's not that I was even that much in. I mean, I took philosophy courses in college, but I really didn't get into a lot of like philosophy, logic, formal, informal logic, critical, just a lot of different aspects of critical thinking. And I really didn't dig my heels deep into that dirt until I realized that there was a lot of art nonsense that was being circulated in a lot of art education. There was a lot of nonsensical claims, unsupported claims, just bald assertions that had zero support or very little.
Tattooing.
I can't say, and this is where I have to watch my language. I can't say there's no evidence for some of these things, there's very poor evidence. Because you could say, a lot of people will claim, well, so and so had used this in this manner, or had done this in this manner, and this was their result. And some people, if you really wanted to adhere to, some strict rules of analysis, you could say, well, that's like an anecdotal claim. You can
absolutely,
absolutely, and that, but anecdote tends to be really, really poor evidence.
Oh yeah,
really, really poor evidence. So
it's a rhetorical statement with no science behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I'm sure this is rampant in a lot of different disciplines and fields where, there's a whole host of issues that I think could lead to a certain field having that. I'm just thinking to myself, that's an enormous list, but especially in a lot of the creative endeavors where there could be these different subjective and unfortunately sometimes malleable foundations.
Yeah.
And then that's where we find that a lot of the seeds planted in that malleable ground are kind of nonsense. And then things just start to run rampant from there. And in a lot of fields where people are using a lot of heuristics, like kind of cognitive shortcuts, they're super helpful because your working memory isn't huge. So you can only focus on so many things when you're involved in complex activity. So we use a lot of heuristics and shortcuts so we could perform these really, really complex tasks. The problem is people take these heuristics and they don't realize that it might be a shortcut for something.
Yeah.
And they build on those heuristics as though the heuristic is the science itself.
Yeah, and that's totally incorrect.
The supported claim itself. And that's what I mean by there's a lot of seeds kind of planted into a malleable ground that then grow up a lot more nonsense. And then when I started realizing that there was a lot of weeds like that in art education, when I was coming up through college and then art school, I started really looking to what tools do I have at my disposal that I could really evaluate some of these claims, some of this, dogma that was really being
that's a good word. I like that.
Pushed through different aspects of art education. And when you start to use these tools of analysis of, rational thinking, critical analysis, you find that there's no support for this. There's really, really bad support for this. Why are people doing it? Why are a lot of people doing this? And there's myriad reasons why people do this and that. But that's where a lot of my focus has been in the past 20 odd years, is looking at making art education inherently more reliable, more consistent.
That's literally what I have been doing myself. Absolutely.
It's incredibly encouraging to hear that more people in adjacent fields are taking this same approach, because what you're going to do is you're going to create a better generation of artists. And I'm using better in that regard. Okay. And remember how I just said before, using better, but these can be problematic terms, but I will define how I'm using that. I'm using better as in future artists will have to rely less on happy accidents, chance, having something work out.
Yeah. It's because if you don't have the foundational knowledge, or at least something to build off of, you won't understand how that happy accident occurred, how to replicate it, and then it gets lost in the fucking ether. It is so aggravating with that. And then I always find people who are able to replicate it without being able to explain it, it becomes a trade secret. Because then you're being confronted with why the questions. You don't have either the confidence or knowledge in how to do it, and then you're locked in. And then you don't do it. You can't maybe explore it. You can't do this. And the ego comes into play and everything falls apart. And that's literally, I'm imagining you've been doing this for 20 years. I've been really pushing this hard for about 10 years until I've been in it. The pushback initially has been, and when you said dogma, oh my gosh. Dogmatic application of things. It has been so extreme in some cases. I've had cease and desist letters from people when we started to investigate things, legal actions taken, threats, you know what I mean? It's wild.
because it's just like,
So,
well, show
I
us
have
something
I have a
else.
folder. I have a folder somewhere on my computer that has a file, just like a Word file, document that has a lot of the best comments. And again, I'm using best as in to describe most outlandish that
Yeah,
I've
get the
got.
air quotes around that one. That's
Yeah,
great.
I've gotten from some people. My favorite, I think my favorite to date was that someone just said, "Why don't you go join ISIS?" And I was like, where does the conversation go productively from there?
It's gone. You've lost it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the water. The fish is off the hook. You're gone.
Yeah. All right.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
How many times do you get people asking you about your credentials? That's been happening to me a ton lately. They're like, well, how do you know this? Like, you're saying something that's different than literally everyone else. Like, what are your credentials? How do you know
that? I don't think that, and I don't know. You might educate me here that in the tattoo world, this is very different. In the art world, there tends to be less of a people aren't looking so much for alphabet soup in the realm of where did you go to school, how many letters do you have strung after your name. I mean, if someone was interested in my education, I'd be happy to present that to them. But I think a lot of people, when they are wondering how they're going to evaluate what you're saying right off the bat, I think, I don't know, you could determine whether you think this is a good thing or a bad thing. And again, using those terms very loosely.
Yeah.
I think people first of all look at your work.
So yeah, subjective meritocracy. Absolutely. That's where my brain, that's first. Yeah.
I'm not going to say, this person, they're not going to say to me, well, where did you go to college? What classes did you take? What did you major in?
Am I better than you, in my opinion? Yeah.
Yeah. And, I worked really hard to have a level of demonstrable virtuosity in what I do. So
that's a great way of saying that.
Yeah. So
that's fantastic.
It's like, but I'm very clear, Ryan, here's where a lot of people get surprised. But I will actually interject. I will interject on behalf of the person that I might be debating with. And I'll say, just because my artwork looks the way it does, doesn't necessarily mean that claim I am making is true.
Yeah.
That now there may be, it depends on the nature of the claim.
Of course.
But what my experience is, what my skill level is, for example, if I could just give you a quick example here, I had one artist that jumped into a conversation I was having about vision being veridical. Like, do we see the world the way it is? And the answer is no.
That's some 101 level stuff. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
We were as I remember the conversation, we were talking about this, and then it was either originally focused on the nature of color or it had become about color. But anyway, one of the examples or one of the ideas that was put forward in this conversation is the fact, and I say fact, I can't get any closer to the mic, the fact.
Yeah.
The fact that color is not an environmental property.
No.
It's something that, colloquially is in your mind. It's a biological response.
Yeah, to an external stimuli.
It's a first person view of a neurochemical response to an environmental energy. It's something that happens in your mind.
Yeah.
So to speak. And this artist, who was a skilled artist, this was a skilled person. And I remember this skilled person probably said, and I will say this unabashedly here, without any names, probably appropriate filter.
Yeah.
This artist said a really dumb thing. And
right on. Don't hold back. We love that on this show. This is great.
And this artist had said, well, color is a property of the environment. And I know this because my camera could capture it.
What the baby Jesus is that?
What the sweet baby Jesus.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And it was one of those situations
That's
where
a recoil where you just go, pardon?
Yeah, like I kind of stopped and I did think for a second, I'm like, okay, this person's trolling. He's not serious. It's like when you run into like a flat earther, like they're not serious.
Yeah.
You know? But just like some flat earthers are, they're really into that concept. This guy thought like that was the bombshell. Boom. Like he could have had that written on a card and then slapped that on a table, and he thought that was just going to reverberate through the ages.
Yeah.
And it was probably one of the single dumbest things I have ever heard. And so I wanted to start explaining, well, I could walk you through how, a camera, uses certain type of.
Let's talk tech. Yeah.
We could talk about the tech, what a camera is doing, and why. There's what his position there and the evidence he put forward. I might describe that as well. This person in general, everything he was saying in this conversation was fractally wrong.
Yeah.
Do you know what fractally wrong is? It means that every aspect of his argument was as wrong as his entire perspective on the issue. All of that was completely equal. It was.
That's such a great explanation.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was fractal stupidity, and I really remember that. That's one that stood out. Like, wow.
Yeah, wow. I get that. It's like all of a sudden they pulled out the core tenet of their web of beliefs, right? Like the Socratic, like foundational aspect of how they built the vast majority of their understanding of that, everything moving forward, and they presented it to you. And it was,
Well, and it's, if you present information to someone that might challenge a preconceived notion, sometimes, people there could be an array of responses people have there, but if you wanted to put it into some type of caricature, into this binary this binary output of you have people on like two ends of this spectrum. That's a better way. We'll look at like the two ends of this spectrum, and some people might actually be like, that's really interesting, tell me more.
Yeah.
But then on the other end of the spectrum, you'll have these people that will engage in these wild mental gymnastics, defend an idea that may not only be like a poorly formed idea, but its support is laughably bad.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Laughably bad. And the more that you try to simplify an explanation, and this is something I am sure I would guarantee this, that you've experienced this, but the more simple you try to make the explanation so as for an individual to really catch what you're saying, you start to sound more and more condescending, which turns the person off more and more.
Yeah.
Like
trying to extend an olive branch, and they're just.
So often, and this, I'm willing to accept this is a flaw in my communication skills. When I try to make something simple, a lot of people interpret it as just inherently condescending, and they like just kind of shut off. Like they're like, I don't know what I could say on this podcast, but like, you're being an asshole. I don't want to deal with you, blocked. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I didn't, I will try. I kind of have a rule where I won't jump into someone's conversation. Mm-hmm. If I, because I see a lot of conversations going on online about, in the field of the things that I do, and they'll be, throwing back and they'll be back and forth a lot of just bad ideas, and I so bad I want to jump in, but I'm like, you know what? I don't want to ruin someone's party, but if someone mentions someone tags me in that conversation,
then you fucking go. Yeah, it's an open invitation. You're a fucking vampire,
dude. It's like a wrestling match. Yep. You tag me in, now it's on.
Yeah, absolutely. I've 100% noticed that, and I've actually been noticing more and more over the past year. I started to maybe withdraw a bit more because one, I noticed I'm making the same comments over and over and over again, and it's like at times I almost feel like I'm not heard. Or maybe it's just that the sea of, and we'll just do air quotes around the stupidity, seems to have been so pervasive that combating it almost feels like you're swimming up against a riptide trying to get out of it, you know. But as time has passed, I've actually been trying just to like take more time to craft more reasonable responses. Which, as that's been happening, and I don't know if this has happened to you as well.
That's hard to do.
I end up finding myself slowly being pushed out of the conversations, and people will continue as if I haven't said anything now. So it's as if I'm not there. I'll take the time to craft, and I'm laborious with how I spend time citing, referencing, putting down things, giving articles, doing, you know, I'll go through everything like this is why this is considered true at this time, and people will go right around it. Face to face at conventions, speaking to them. I'll be in a group of 50 people and be like, well, blah, 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 blah. And I've had an entire group of people literally turn their backs on me and start to walk away. I'm just like, all right, well, I'll go over here.
Good talk. Yeah. Well, listen, I prepared let me walk that back. I found a great handout that I've put aside, and speaking of coming across as condescending, would probably really come across as condescending, but it's kind of a handout that I will drop into a conversation anymore that just says, this is how you hold a rational discussion.
My God. Dude, so I can understand where you're coming with that, but I can see that being so condescending.
It's set up like, it's set up like a flow chart. Have I done this? Have I committed this? If not, proceed with the conversation. Yeah.
You got to have a Six Sigma certification to understand where this is. That's great.
It's because one of the most frustrating things for me is when people start what's that called? A gish gallop. I think it's called a gish gallop. And it's when people will either, throw a whole bunch, a big conflation of information at you. And it's so conflated and problematic. Like it's a whole bunch of assertions and claims all tied together. And the frustration you have in untangling it makes it look like your position's weaker. Or a gish gallop, if I'm remembering it correctly, and sometimes I confuse some of my informal fallacies, but it's also like when people, let's say you make a claim and I'm like, well, that's not true because X and Y. And you're like, well, blah, blah, blah. And then you go on to another claim without even addressing
it. Yeah.
That's wrong.
Yeah.
You just go on to something else.
Yeah.
And I really piss people off because I hold their feet to the fire. I'm like, I am not addressing anything further points.
Right here.
You either acknowledge that the claim you just made was wrong, or the position had a fatal error, or I'm not continuing because your refusal to address that issue, to acknowledge that aspect of the conversation means you are not capable of engaging in this conversation. You're not prepared for this. You're not equipped to do this, or you want to engage in dishonest discourse that I'm not interested in.
That's brilliant. Yeah. No, it's great. Yeah. Have you ever heard of Christopher Hitchens? Have you ever heard of him?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
The Hitch was great with his debates and stuff, going up and, speaking against Mother Teresa's canonization.
Oh, yeah, that was I think
brilliant. Same thing, right?
When they go through the canonization process in the Catholic Church, and this is I'm trying to remember one of the times I heard Christopher Hitchens promote
They
that.
require the
idea.
devil's advocate.
Yeah, you had to play devil's advocate. And was it Lennon? Was that the guy's name he went up against? Because there was kind of like a big debate where he plays devil's advocate, and I can't remember.
I'm glad that we got the fucking Google here.
Yeah, I can't remember. Lennox. I think it was Lennox.
Oh yeah. That actually sounds right.
Lennox, not Lennon. Lennox. Yeah, and the guy that was really responsible for the On the Art Academies project that I work with now, the founder, Tim Reynolds, he was actually friends with Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, fuck. Right. Yeah. John Lennox. Yep. You were right. Yeah, that's rad. Yeah, the Hitch was brilliant, man. Listen to him speak. I always wish that I had the eloquence to be able to speak. And every once in a while, if I'm trying to do like a debate with somebody, I'll automatically switch to a British accent. It's a little bit mild to try to pull some of the more eloquent words out of my mouth. Right in my head, it turns into that. Even though it's like, West Coast, East Coast. I spent a lot of time I love the East Coast of the United States. So I kind of got that attitude, and I've got to try to polish it through that.
Is that where you guys are? You guys are from? Are you guys from the West Coast?
Yeah, I'm in Portland, Oregon.
Oh
wow. Brian's from Chicago, but he lives in Arkansas right now. So
where's Brian at?
I've texted him. He's like, oh fuck, he's been on his tablet doing some illustrations, like 12 to 16 hours a day, 3 days straight. He has fallen into the fucking twilight zone.
But is it for a specific project, or is it just like a creative inspiration that hit him that
he's trying to, so we're going to be going and doing some conventions. So he's trying to get together enough prints, these types of prints. And he had a cool idea with them. He's going with like this manga, like Supergirl type of, creations and stuff. He's trying to come up with a series of them, all Halloween themed before Halloween convention to just stack the table. I never come with any of that stuff. I take like 2 prints that I got, and I print out a bunch of stickers and I dump them on the ground and I say, have at it, have fun. But he's like ordered meticulous, stands.
Which is odd because that sounds like the complete opposite of the roles you described for your participation in this podcast.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting how there's like that whole dynamic inverts.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
He identifies he is an artist, like 100%. He is an artist. He identifies as an artist. His tattoos that he accomplishes can be considered a type of art, illustration or otherwise, right?
Absolutely, 100% type of art.
So my approach to tattooing and art is specifically trying to remove bias so I can create artwork as if I'm the person requesting it in their way. So I'm trying to, instead of put my process forward and my interpretation of what the world is through my senses, I'm trying to understand I have a really complex process to do all this stuff. I'll come up with like a psychological and aesthetic profile that will guide like the initial concept for how the artwork's going to be. And then the tools that we're going to use are funneled through their genetic, health, and lifestyle profiles that we collect in the initial 2 to 3 hours that we end up talking. And then we'll utilize that, and then we apply it to the medium before we even start the artwork. So we'll do dry runs, map ups and stuff on the part of the body with the design and shapes, blocks, or other things, so we can understand viewability, interaction with the environment, try to understand aging based on their specific body as well, and through their different biological processes that we identify. Then we do the artwork, then we do the tattoo, and everything is collaborative. So when I'm doing this, I'm doing it with the person the whole time.
Well, let me ask you a question. With a process like that, I know that I've had the very good fortune to have a number of tattoo artists study with me, and one that comes to mind right away, Dan Christian, who's now he is our tremendous artist. Both tattooing and his artwork, drafting. He's an incredible draftsman. He's a brilliant painter, and he's turned out to be a wonderful teacher. And he heads up our Ani Art Academy's Thailand. He is our Thailand
I think
instructor.
I've seen the profile on there. Yeah.
Yeah, he's tremendous in the classroom. He's tremendous, with the tattoo equipment in his hand. He's tremendous with a palette and a brush in his hand. He's a tremendous all around artist and professional. And but when I see a tattoo, because I know a lot of the things Dan would do, if someone Dan would post a lot of pictures of tattoos he had done. Not so much now that he's his creative avenues have diversified more. Yeah. It's expanded a bit. So, but when he was posting a lot of tattoos, when he was tattooing a lot, I would recognize a Dan Christian tattoo right away.
Yes.
Would you say with your process, with what you're doing now, where you are so malleable with the aesthetic qualities, and again, I'm doing this sight unseen by your description, but with such a malleable range of aesthetic quality that you're trying to explore or manifest, and all these other factors that are being custom tuned to an individual.
Yeah.
Do you feel that your personal brand is sacrificed for the greater good of that process?
Oh, yeah. Nah, I don't care about that. I threw that away a long time ago. It's not so like when I do artwork for me, there's a very specific tone, shape. I had spent decades kind of pulling things apart and trying to understand why I do what I do before I started to really apply it in a way that felt natural. Mm-hmm. And it's not correlative between my experience with tattooing. Like tattooing, it would be like asking a plumber if they identify with the brand of toilet that they're installing. In essence, for lack of a better phrasing, right? If I'm going to be a roofer,
I know some plumbers that might.
It's a Japanese singing toilet. This thing's sick as fuck, No, but most of my stuff, like I can't say that I can't fully remove myself from that piece, because sometimes you're forced to interject your own personality into this thing to take a little bit of control, especially if the person has specific holdups or hangups, right? If there's insecurities, anxieties, if they're unsure about things, maybe we didn't go over something enough, something like this, or maybe they don't want to commit that to their body and possibly make a mistake. They need a little hand holding. I can add myself into it, but for the most part, what we're seeing, and we could ask Brian about some of the fucking wild tattoos that I've done the past year, is literally what these people have come up with.
Okay, those tattoos, if there was a gallery of tattoos, how confident would you feel? I know you don't care about it, but just as they've manifested of that gallery, let's say,
I go where you're going with
tattoos
this.
you did this year, mixed up with other tattoos that other tattoo artists have done, would someone, your average layperson, be able to pick out your 10 tattoos?
I don't think so.
What about someone you knew? Let's say Brian, if you didn't show him to Brian, would Brian be able to pick out that's a Ryan?
I think, depending on the subject matter, at 50-50. My goal is
I find that super interesting. It's so interesting to me personally, because I'm so used to talking with artists about ways that they could increase, let's say, their presence in what they're making. So there's this unified branding that, that's a so-and-so that painted this, or that's a so-and-so that, like, they're always looking for ways, how can I increase that? So my brand is carried.
That's Brian.
Everything that comes out of the studio.
That's Brian.
It's so 100%. Fascinating. Yeah, to hear someone that is engaged in a process that's trying to give an experience to a client / collaborator, at the way you're looking at it, in a way that they're willing to give up that type of branding push in their own work to manifest something that the client is just going to be happy with on a long-term level. It's a really interesting perspective that I don't encounter all that much.
No. Right on. Yeah, that's literally been the goal. Like if you look at Brian's work is identifiable to a T in a minute. If you see it, it's him. Globally. I could put his stuff up with anyone else in the world. You could put up 1 million pictures in one of his, I would find it. I would know it off the hop.
Awesome.
100%.
Awesome.
But I think that, so I in my first decade of doing tattoos, because I was always like a pretty analytical person, I was trying to learn as much as possible. So I traveled. As soon as I had my apprenticeship, I considered myself a journey person, right? To journey. I traveled. I spent 10 years.
For the people listening, there's so many air quotes that just happened. So many air quotes.
Yeah. I traveled all over North America trying to have trying to spread what I had learned in exchange for new information, like take the literal approach to being a journey person, right? I wanted to learn the new tricks, the trade of like how to apply this or how to do this and how to learn the mediums and spaces that I didn't know. And I fell into an artistic like spot where my voice through my work started to come out. And it was extremely confusing to me because it felt as if when we go with like identity and ownership, who owns the artwork that becomes this person? And that was like a lingering thought in the back of my mind, right? I don't own this person's skin once I've marked it. They do. And so this was like 5 years after my initial training, which was disappointing at best, traveling through North America, I started to go, okay, well, how can I just not do that? Because I didn't feel good every time I posted. I'm like, I did this. I take a picture of a tattoo without the person standing there. And it was like, we were calling them canvases. It was dehumanizing. Like, there was no aspect of the person.
I get it. Yeah, through, I totally get it.
So just spun it. And now most people call me crazy, which is fun. But the process that we do is so much more in depth, and it's all about educating the clients. Like I still try to educate, and I do educate tattooers, across the globe, which is fun. But the clients seem to be more thirsty for knowledge, and they're more ready to overcome the dogma, like you had said before. I love that word. That should be the word of the day. Ding. I'll put in the DJ sound for the thing here. But that always seemed to be better. And my hope was initially to influence change externally by applying pressure there and forcing it inside. Yeah. Because it's one voice. And in tattooing, meritocracy is key. If you hold your work up to someone else, even if you know more, even if you can apply more, even if you can do more styles, even if you can tattoo more clients, even if you charge more, you do whatever, that doesn't matter, because your following matters, your brand recognition matters, and what everyone else thinks about you matters, not the other artists, but the clients. Just kind of took it, right? It's a bit of a manipulation on my part to try and set myself apart, which I guess could be considered my style. Now
it's interesting, but right. That's the like really interesting part is the obvious type of branding that people would like. It would want to be something that's seen. Yeah, it would be something that would be inherently something that could be elicited from the visual experience of the product.
Oh yeah,
but you're doing it where it's not that, but your brand. So I shouldn't really say that you're sacrificing a brand.
No, I understand what you mean. Yeah,
but the mode of that branding, yours is not inherent in the final product. It's in the experience that the client has. It's really, really interesting. And speaking of when you were talking about ownership, I remember seeing not long ago the famous tattoo artist that Kat Von D
just getting sued again. Yeah, we're actually doing a story about that right now. So
yeah,
that's another thing that this is all kind of like flowed together.
Is this the Miles Davis image?
Yes. So this sparked the initial inquiry. So I work as also like a journalist and a science writer on the side, and I'm a researcher. I do a bunch of weird shit, which is why I'd never have a fucking life. But,
you and me both.
Rock and roll. But it came down to the idea of trying to identify this ownership of an image, right? And my stance has always been, as soon as I put this image onto somebody, even if I've created the design, it's no longer mine because it becomes a part of them. And so when I seen this, I started to make a list about all of the different situations in which someone would get a tattoo and someone could claim ownership over it. And it went straight to human trafficking. So one of the stories that we're working on right now is to identify these brands, as they call it. And I had worked for a couple of years at a shop where we actually would exclusively try to help people who are victims of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation to like cover and rework and like figure out this stuff. And when I was doing it then, I didn't know as much as I did now. And maybe I didn't have as much empathy. And I was just coming off of that being an artist, and I'll air quote around that too, vibe, right?
So many air quotes.
So many air quotes. That's like, that should be the show's air quotes.
Yeah. So many.
It's when I would do it, I wouldn't try to get too engaged, but I did have one person that I had tattooed that I spent close to maybe 15 or 20 hours with over a period of like 9 months. And I'll use, non-gendered things to make sure I'm concealing anonymity on this as well. They helped me really understand some things about this. And when we think about that with tattooing, I think, and maybe even with art, this would almost be the same way. When we think about it in a puerile, subjective way of how we filter all these interpretations, it's so much more broad and how those applications can be,
Yeah.
And tearing that down and trying to figure out, okay, well, there has to be room for everything, but in what capacity, right? And so that's, anyways, one of the things we're trying to do right now. It's
fascinating story, and that's just
rough.
It's profound. That's profound. I wouldn't have imagined that's where you were going to go with that, but that's incredible. I have such respect for people regardless of their field. If there's some aspect of what your passion is actually helps people, that's really,
we're trying to
that's
we're never going to make money off this stuff, and that's not the goal. Like literally, like everything that we do with the tattooing, the education, everything that we do is free.
Yeah.
Flat out. I've monetized the website, and I'm trying to do the other stuff, like to just get ads
you're
on
so
it,
greedy.
whatever.
You're so greedy.
But I didn't. So like for the first the website that we've had is up now for 2 years, just about 2 years in total. November it'll be 2 years. And just last month I was approached by like an 8-tier advertising company. They're like, we can advertise on your space. And I was like, fucking whatever. I don't want to pay for the hosting costs because it's fucking killing me.
Oh yeah.
You know. So
well, listen, that's the thing that
it's kind of like, I feel dirty, you know.
when I had a private studio, that was, just after I graduated art school, I moved back to my hometown, and I always just wanted to open up a small art studio in my hometown. And if people wanted to, maybe I would give, I never set out to be like a teacher. That was not really that wasn't my jam early on. And I just had,
got you.
Yeah. When I was going through college and art school, mostly art school, like, people are always at, well, how are you doing that? And how are you doing this? And, it just became second nature to be painting and explaining to people what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. This is my thought process. I'm doing this because, I've gotten these results, so forth and so on. And when I moved back to Pennsylvania, I went to school in Baltimore, a wonderful art school, the Schuller School of Fine Arts in Baltimore. And when I moved back to Pennsylvania, I had been offered a teaching job in a local college that I went to. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then I started getting messages and emails, and people were getting in contact with me wondering, hey, are you going to teach out of your studio? And I thought, well, yeah, I guess, I could do that. I've been teaching ever since. And I can't imagine I can't imagine my art career now without the educational component involved. It's become so like inextricably intertwined with my creative process. And I think knowing that, hey, I'm going to have to explain this or that to somebody, so it forces me to really organize all the concepts that are leading to this maybe manifestation of this technique or methodology.
Absolutely.
It forces me, I need to organize it in such a way cognitively. And to me, I think that really reinforces my own comprehension of these concepts. So it really is, it's a selfish thing. I teach because I'm very selfish.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the same way. No, I totally get that. It's weird because I always feel like until you have, and I wrote 3 pages of questions for you, but I don't think we're going to hit any of them. But I had written that like the pathway to mastery has to be through education. That's the final step of everything, right? Because you may think that you know something, but until you can pass that on to ensure that it's available for other people, it's not real. That is 100% subjective. You got to test your hypothesis.
Let me tell you, a big challenge is being able to, and a real test of your own comprehension of the many aspects that you're doing. How many different types of people, I'm using that very loosely, can you explain it? So many air quotes. How many types of people could you explain that to? And I'll tell you something. I was terrified.
Oh yeah.
When I signed on for the Ani Art Academies project, and I had put together, a curriculum that was, I felt very, very strong, and it was tricky. The curriculum that, the final curriculum, because we wanted to teach to people a lot of these skills that would be applicable to many different types of artistic endeavor.
Foundational aspects of this stuff, starting off at the bottom.
Extraordinarily adaptable skills. Extraordinarily adaptable. This could be for, this type of education could be a baseline for someone that could go into tattooing, could go into concept design, can go into illustration,
landscape fucking design.
It doesn't
anything.
matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. This is all about elements of visual communication, developing a lot of fine motor control, a lot of deliberate practice in
it's
to
like
develop
music,
these.
right?
So what we're doing, what our curriculum is doing essentially is automatizing the lowest level components of visual communication.
Totally like
endeavors.
music. You're starting with hot cross buns before you can play Tchaikovsky.
Ink Master returns with a new season and new home, Paramount Plus. On September 7th, beloved legendary artists, and the artists fans love to hate, return to the shop to battle it out, facing some of the most exciting and epic challenges seen in the history of the competition. All for the biggest grand prize yet, $250,000 and the title of Ink Master. In the new season, host Joel Madden is joined by judges Nico Hurtado, Ami James, and Ryan Ashley, and Dave Navarro as the Master of Chaos. Watch as the artists go head-to-head for the champion title, facing some of the most memorable Flash challenges in the show's history, amped to extreme levels they didn't think possible. They'll have to prove that they're masters of all the high-level skills that set an Ink Master apart: composition, precision, color theory, finesse, stamina, and endurance. The new season of Ink Master is streaming September 7th exclusively on Paramount Plus. Head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free.
Well, here's the thing. If you were to look around, and for anybody listening, look around right now in the room that you're sitting in, look at anything written. Look at any text. Okay, here's the challenge. Look at that text and try to not read it.
Oh, I can do that. Aha.
It's for many people, it's almost, especially at the first crack at that, seemingly impossible.
Squints and look.
Because it has become so automatized. There's so much automation. Like when we first start to learn to read, we're doing very low level symbol decoding.
Yeah.
Okay. This little shape that I see, this little shape that I'm perceiving has like a certain equivalent of a sound. And then maybe that sound, when it's strung together with something else, might be a word. So it's this very, very systematic, low-level decoding.
It's
very, very low level. But what happens is, through an enormous amount of repetition, an enormous amount of practice, we get very, very good at like instantly decoding, where that type of low-level decoding is all automated and we don't have to think about it. And now, years later, and I apologize to anyone listening to this that's illiterate, I'm very sorry. But for those of us that are literate,
fuck them. No, sorry.
For those of that required no air quotes, by the way. But for people that are literate, they have to put like some kind of disclaimer on there. For literate people,
I'll do it. Yeah.
You don't have to think anymore about like sounding out a word, or I grew up in the era of phonics, so you sound out words, and you don't have to do that anymore. So what my goal is to use that same learning dynamic in teaching someone how to use certain types of representation to communicate visually, and to do so with initially very, very high definition. This is going to sound a little technical, but percept surrogacy. So you're creating a stimulus. You're creating something that is going to elicit a response from a viewer that will be similar to the visual experience that an individual might encounter with those actual objects in the real world.
Yeah.
That's kind of a very, very wordy explanation for what we're doing. So just like with mimicry, okay,
Yeah.
in
The
terms
first
of
step
language,
towards mastery, of course, right? Yes.
right? So, and I'm still saying very, very basic here, but let's say, hold on, I just like somebody has to interrupt me here.
Yeah, no worries.
Come on, guys. Come on, Mike. Someone's got to take my dogs next door.
Yeah, no worries.
Come on. One of my artists here, Mike Carson. I'm going to give a shout out to Mike Carson. Mike, this is Ryan running the podcast. Mike was just, he's one of the artists here at the On Art Academy's Waichulis. He's one of the finalists in the 2022 Beautiful Bizarre Art Prize competition.
Oh, no shit. Oh, right on. Hey, golf clap. 50.
Big
golf
shout
clap.
out on everyone listening. Look up Mike. We're trying to get him more active on social media. So right now we're encouraging hate mail towards him to put more of his work on social media.
Send this guy your worst.
Get that campaign launched. That would be great.
Everyone in Boston, get on there.
So
yeah.
But like, so let's say, you know, and this is something that a lot of people criticize. You know, they see the type of work that we do and they're like, well, you know, you're just copying. Anyone could copy. And or I'll get this one. Here's a good one. Ready for this one? Yeah. Hey, all the work at your school looks the same.
What?
And the response that I give to that is, wow. Yeah, and
that's fantastic.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. Like, could you imagine someone walking into a classroom where people are learning penmanship?
Mm.
You're like, hey, all these letter A's look the same.
Then you got a good teacher.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes, that's what we're doing. We're trying to make sure everybody understands. Watch how I bring this conversation full circle. Everyone understands the conventions of the activity we're doing. We want to automatize the lowest level conventions.
Yeah.
You know, without, now here's the tricky part, and this is where I was going with all this. So people could introduce their own aesthetic preferences. See, right now,
oh my God, that's my fucking argument. And it's so nice to hear someone else say that.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah. So
fucking
there's a lot of these schools right now. These ateliers, which are great, that are kind of following this French academic system, which usually involves, for maybe people that may be in the know listening to this, it'll usually involve a piece of the curriculum that's called drawing from the flat, where people are drawing from they're copying what are called Barg plates, these illustrations by Charles Barg, and then from there you move on to cast drawing these casts, these statues from antiquity, from life, using a lot of the methodology that you've elicited from doing these Barg copies. Now, when you know, someone that is knowledgeable about this French academic system, if you ask them, well, why are you doing these Barg copies per se, and why are you drawing these casts of antiquity? The reason that these things were included historically for educational purposes in this context was so that you not only developed your drawing skills, your observation skills, but these subjects were supposed to impart a certain aesthetic quality onto the practitioner, as though these images from antiquity, these subjects from antiquity, is the pinnacle of art in some way. Now, our art education project was international. We were going to several different countries with the Ani Art Academies to open up schools. The last thing we wanted to do was walk into some area that had a completely different cultural set of a different culture, a different
not colonizing their art.
Rich artistic history in their own right. And we're supposed to walk in and say, hey, these Greek artists were way better than anything you've ever done. Because that is bullshit.
Yeah. Bullshit.
Someone that would hold that position, I would argue, my knee-jerk response is they have a very, very narrow view of what the art experience even is.
That's it. And that's academic experience nowadays too. Oh, absolutely. There's one of the... Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, Ryan, go ahead.
So
I'm blabbing way too much.
No, you're good. You're good. So it rings so true. One of my friends is an academic here in Portland, and he's a member of the American Pragmatist Society. And I don't know if you ever heard of pragmatic beliefs or ethics attached to that pragmatic thing. So there was a specific idea in America before World War II where we were trying to develop our own ontology and philosophy to apply to things across the board. And this is where like a lot of innovation came from. And then what happened was the pragmatic movement was slowly shoved aside after World War II when we started to bring all these people from Europe back over. There are people in high positions, right? You can think of like NASA with Wernher von Braun, right? Like these like rocket scientists and philosophers and thinkers and artists. And we installed them in the highest parts of academia. When they got up there, they started to impart the same type of European mindset back down upon the people who were studying and slowly pushed the American type of like pragmatic, like this, the idea that there's more than one way to do something and we should just be patient and wait has been pushed aside. And you can see it through everything. It's why like we have so many different ways of interpreting things. And hearing you say that about art, like I have never read or studied this much about what you just told me, of course, right? I may have maybe heard it in passing. I doubt it. But hearing that was just like, it seems so pervasive now to push that idea where like, you're not enough, we're better than you. And to bring this full circle as well, to not add to it a shred of logical proof as to why it's the right way to do it is so fucking frustrating.
That is exactly why I said my knee-jerk response is that your view, someone that would hold that this art is just inherently better.
Yeah.
To me, that's
it's flawed as fuck.
It's ill-defined. It's an amorphous, problematic statement. And I get, but see, here's the thing. I have a lot of respect for the people that promote that concept. That's great. And probably, which would be in synergy with what you're talking about with this pragmatic movement, where there's many different ways to do something. If you want to do something a certain way that does, let's say you're a big fan of that aesthetic and you want to pursue it in that context, that's great that it's there. And the work that those people produce, in my opinion, is amazing. Beautiful. Yep. It's fantastic.
But it's not the only fucking way.
Theory, or rather, my position is that I believe you could garner the same skills without the aesthetic imposition.
Yeah.
So that's what my curriculum was designed to do, is to present exercises that have as little aesthetic influence as possible.
Oh, that's... Dude, that's awesome. It's translatable. And I fucking appreciate that. That's awesome.
And but I was terrified still. I was terrified when we deployed this curriculum in like 5 countries. And I thought, well, I hope people are going to understand why we're doing certain things, because again, if you're trying to remove the aesthetic, a lot of the exercises and deliberate practice is very taxing. If you really want to get into specific deliberate practice, it's a very taxing activity. It's not fun. And now I'm trying to make the exercises even more generic so as to not, again, impose some particular aesthetic. Now,
that's brilliant that you're starting to remove the ego more and more through that. That's
from there we go into these really, really high definition, which again, a lot of people confuse them with photographs, like the paintings and the drawings. But again, we're using, we're using the system we might find with something like language. One of the reasons, and this is a very big simplification, one of the reasons language is harder to learn when you're older. Critical periods of, brain development and all that jazz aside.
Yeah, we're not physicalists here.
Yeah, just to kind of, yes, I acknowledge that, of course. But later on, we learn the language ass backwards later on. When we're young, think about what's happening. We are hearing sounds. We're perceiving a stimulus, and we are engaged in an activity that makes some reproduction of that stimulus. Yep. We're hearing these sounds, and then we're making sounds. And then we start to make associations. Your brain is just a huge association engine.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I find if I make this sound, this lady shows up with food.
Yeah.
You know
You're
what I mean?
making order out of entropy. Absolutely.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
No, if there was something better than air quotes, that Ryan should have used that. If there was some kind of, maybe jazz hands would work there. I'm not sure.
Spirit sprinkles. I don't fucking know.
Spirit sprinkles. But we make this sound. This lady shows up. So now we start. Okay, whenever I make this sound, this person shows up. But did you notice what happened there in the beginning? We weren't thinking about what this sound, quote unquote, means. We haven't assigned it any meaning. No. We were strictly concerned about mimicry. We heard a stimulus. Can we make that sound again? Mm-hmm. So with our, I should say, later on, when you take a language class, they're telling you this word
means this. Yeah.
So, okay. So, but now we're doing something very, very, that's much more complicated. Yeah. And we're trying to do it at like several
reverse engineering the understanding. Absolutely.
Right. So we're kind of going backwards. We want the meaning, and then we're focusing, a bit on mimicking the sound with the same type of precision we might instinctively do as a child.
Oh, yeah.
But now the reason we go right from these very generic exercises in our program to these really high definition drawings and paintings is because those high definition drawings and paintings are the analog of the sounds we might hear. It is a recreation of the stimulus itself.
You've made a linear path instead of something that's circuitous. You're not having to go back down in circle and try to build onto that and make some type of larger ontology. You're just breaking it down and making us. That's brilliant. I'm
a brilliant guy, Ryan.
I have been toying with that idea, but almost in the inverse, which is really interesting. Because I think that a lot of people have found a rote memorization way to almost apply stuff without theory in tattooing specifically.
Yeah.
And trying to come back down and explain, maybe I'm like a colonialist within tattooing now. Oh, oops.
Maybe that's why people are turning their backs. They're running away to preserve their perspective.
I'm trying to do that backwards. I think it's fantastic. No, I can see a lot of similarities here, which is really interesting. Like, I'm actually like, I'll cut this out. I'm really actually glad to meet you. It's weird. It's like affirming in a way because I have been met with a lot of opposition, and it's constantly like, because I'm as far as I know, I'm the only person doing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to keep the momentum going, but if you can see somebody who's even adjacent to what you're doing, who has literally done what you're trying to do, it gives me hope.
It's
crossed,
it's an incredibly motivational thing to not only meet someone else. And I have found with a couple of the things that, my delusions of grandeur led me to believe, hey, I'm pretty smart for coming up with X, Y, or Z. But then I found out, hey, this other person, 100 years ago in this completely different field was using the same strategy, which had now become the foundation for something else. And you realize, I'm in good company, but I'm not some, genius coming up with all this. And later on, when I started seeing this deployed all over at these different schools. We have an academy in Anguilla, Dominican Republic, Thailand, Sri Lanka, and here in the U.S. And these schools, the program's very challenging.
That's an interesting
but the
setup actually for
results are out
locale.
of this world. Out
That's
of this world.
That's really interesting. It seems awkward to me, like if you're going to be doing something like this, especially like I did do some reading about like benefactor attachments and this stuff as well. But
Yeah.
like you had picked a
Tim
space,
Reynolds. Tim Reynolds.
like
Yeah.
Tim, we appreciate you.
Everyone appreciates Tim. Tim is the is such an incredible person. It's I my life is 10,000 times more fulfilling than it ever could have been after just from this individual. I mean, that's that. I know that's a big statement, but it's 100% true. But go ahead. What you were going to say? You were doing some reading.
No, with how you guys approach this, I think it's really interesting because most other we'd say like startups, and we'll just do air quotes. There's a lot of air quotes in this episode.
Oh, so many air quotes.
Startups would try to stick to an IP that would be applicable inside of a metric that they could understand, rather than taking it somewhere that's totally opposite. Like I could see this in another person's hands being opened in just multiple locations across the U.S., Canada, right, somewhere in Europe that was mainly English speaking, and it seems like you've taken this to a completely different cultural space.
Yeah,
and applied it. And I mean, for testing your hypothesis, that's brilliant because
what a great way to put that, Ryan. That's brilliant. That's jazz hands.
Yeah,
that's
jazz hands.
It was into another cultural space. But back at the beginning of the conversation, that's what I meant by I was terrified. I was terrified that my hypothesis was going to be full of shit,
just all null.
null and void. I thought, well, it's not going to work here, it won't work there, or it's going to be a problem there. But look, when people ask me what's one of the greatest takeaways that you've had from your involvement in this international educational project, and I'll tell you one of the greatest takeaways, and it's especially important now when we turn on the TV and we tend to see a world that's just incredibly divided on every possible issue, but honestly, we're the same. People are the same all over. They're the same all over. We're all the same species. And this was an incredible reaffirming experience thus far, and I expect it to continue and grow for many years. But up until this point, it is amazing to see that a person that never drew before in Sri Lanka, and a person that never really drew before in a formal capacity, I should say, in a context like this in the United States, could sit down and their performances are remarkably mirrored in each other.
It's fantastic.
Unbelievable. They have people will have the same questions, the same responses, the same frustrations. Just being a part of a project in which such a diverse audience is connected with this shared passion has just it's been just an amazingly fulfilling part of my life.
That's awesome. And I think that's when you think about the metal detector of ideas, when you start seeing the same things. Like I know everyone's always wanting uniqueness or individuality, but when you're a teacher, an instructor, or otherwise, when you see the same results consistently from an idea that you had being tested, and I mean across the board, that is fucking fulfilling. If somebody comes to the same conclusion before you get there every time, it means you're doing something right. Replicating
something right. You're doing something right that's applicable at a species wide level. Everyone's going to get this.
Yeah.
And the
that's so great. Species, why that's so great.
But on the other end of that though is to that person walking in saying, "Oh yeah, all your students' drawings look alike." Again, they're all trying to mimic the sound that the mother's making. You know what I mean? That's what they're doing.
That's it. And
but later on, like I enjoy seeing alumni's work being just wildly dissimilar.
Yeah.
Like it's, we have some graduates that, do this incredible, like non-objective, what a lot of people might describe as just like colloquially abstract work, but it's done with such deliberate mastery It's remarkably attractive. And then on the other end of that spectrum, you have people doing really, really tight, high dynamic, objective, representationalism in some way. And that is also breathtaking. But the thing that I want, the thing that I set out to do for all my students is to give them the ability to be creatively free.
Yeah.
And that comes from their ability to be deliberate.
Absolutely.
Creative freedom.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Creative freedom has nothing to do with going beyond the rules, which again, like I explained before, that's just nonsensical. That's like, I get people saying I want to go beyond the rules. I want to go beyond the canvas. I want to light some incense and eat a handful of crystals. I get it. If that's the way you want to, if that's the way you get into your art, that's awesome. But like for me, creative freedom is about mastering convention.
Yeah.
And let me just give people listening, one example about that. Imagine, it's an example I give a lot because there's a lot of people that argue that, certain types of education stifle creativity. And that is, again, that's almost as dumb as the camera capturing color argument. When someone tells me that, it's just like it's cringeworthy. I have to do the Picard face palm. And it's like, here's an interesting little thought walk through.
Yeah.
Imagine you say, and you have 3 kids, right, Ryan?
That's correct. Yeah.
So if congratulations on that. Nice job, buddy.
Thank you.
If you sent your child to class on the first day, and then imagine they come home from class and you're like, hey, so-and-so, how was your first day? And they're like, oh, great. We loved it. It was wonderful. Did you learn the alphabet? And they said, no, because now imagine your child is disarticulate.
Yeah.
In the interest of creativity, the teacher said we could make up our own. Okay. Well, much to your dismay, you move on to, well, did you learn how to count? Did you learn, maybe 1 through 10? No, we didn't learn, that numeric system, that ancient convention. Our teacher said, in the interest of creativity, we could make up our own. Now think about this. Have you empowered that child to express creativity in a meaningful way because consider that creativity can only be expressed through convention in some way. Yeah. Like if your child never learns the conventions by which to communicate or the conventions by which to use, we'll just stay with communicate. That's pretty much going to cover anything.
Yeah.
Then how are they going to communicate creative ideas?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't understand these basic conventions, which is going to facilitate, there's the term, there's the phrase, it's going to facilitate creativity.
Yep.
If you don't have those conventions, you are, and this is a scientific term, ass out.
Empathy can only take you so far. You do need foundation for stuff.
Yeah,
communication.
If you don't, people say, what's that quote that gets thrown around? You have to learn the rules so you can break them. And that's usually attributed to Pablo Picasso. Let me tell you something. There is no written record Pablo Picasso ever said that. You could Snopes that shit, and I think that was
that's the first meme. There you go.
It was like attributed in some email to who was it? Gandhi, maybe it was attributed to before that.
Yeah.
But there's no record proof. He ever said that.
You can apply it to anyone, right? Charles Manson probably said it, as far as we know.
Yeah, you should say it should say learn the rules so you could use them.
Mm-hmm.
That's profound. The other nonsense, like, okay, that might look cool on a poster with a sunset or something. But
out on the fucking street.
Yeah, like
hang in there, baby. Yeah, I got
the tiger fucking... hanging in the tree. Like, yeah, all right, buddy. Or the whatever kind of jungle cat.
Jesus, yeah, panther. I've got my eyes on you. Yeah, that's fucking.
Yeah,
so
but
silly.
These are the ideas, and there's an article I wrote not real long ago. That's called it's on my website. It's called a caterpillar to the power of why, and it's an article that's all about how powerful the tool of asking why is when you're faced with claims about like what you're a fan of, dogma. It's just
that's the easiest way to bury someone. If somebody makes an outlandish claim, you don't have to refute it. You don't have to contest it. Literally, just keep asking why until they walk away.
Yeah,
that's the easiest defense.
Why? Or, hey, look, we could get lucky. I could say why, and someone could say because of this. And hey, guess what? I learned something.
Yep.
I believe he's an astrophysicist, Lawrence Krauss. I'm a big fan.
4 horsemen.
Yeah, and he would say to a lot of his, I think it's his freshman classes, he would say, hey, I hope at some point in your academic career, you will come across a bit of evidence that completely destroys some long-held belief you've had.
Oh, absolutely.
And then then that experience you will understand, that will open you up to like a true learning experience.
Yeah.
And that's happened to me a number of times. And to the people that showed that I've been galactically wrong on something, I am extraordinarily grateful to those people.
Yeah.
But that's, I debate a lot, a lot of topics online. And I enter these exchanges full well knowing full well that, hey, look, I could be completely wrong, and I'm open to that, and I will thank you if I could walk away learning something new rather than learning a new depth to which something stupid could be, put forward.
Oh my gosh, that's my wife so much. We have a rule in our house. We make claims. It's got to be cited, sourced, and supplied. And then we get 2 days reference time for us to look it over before we go back. She's great like this. I'll say this. And she's a microbiologist. A brilliant person. She's way smarter than I'll ever be. And I'll make a claim and she's like, where's the proof? And I'll be like, hang on, I've got the article. And she's like, this is on the New York Times. I'm not accepting this. I'm like, look at the bottom. There's a link. And she's like, NCBI. All right, I'll be right back. Right.
You gotta, it's usually when someone throws out something that for me is surprising.
Yeah.
Surprise. I'll use
That's
that
a
word.
Good word. Yeah, I like that.
I'll just be like, look, I'm going to need a citation because I would like to go look that up. And there's been 1 or 2 times where someone has put something forward that legitimately supported a position I did not hold, but the vast amount of times, like, someone will cite something and it will be
garbage.
or they misunderstood it, or it's
they read half the fucking abstract.
That's not really. Some people aren't really used to reading a research paper, or they might be citing a book, or because this person said this, or this person said that.
Third-party hearsay. Yeah. Well, here's one for you. So, and I keep thinking about this going back with stuff because, like, in my opinion right now, from talking with you, and like literally, I had written 3 pages of questions, and through our natural conversation, you have answered every one of them, which is fantastic.
That's I'm just so efficient, especially like I said, when the air quotes and the jazz hands come out, we're going to cover everything. Yeah, we're going to cover everything.
Mildly prescient at the same time as well, but so where you came from in your experience in this world, especially coming in as an educator, from the way that you had, it was so abstract in comparison to so many people that you became in like literally, and I've been called this in many stances, maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm not, but you were kind of like a primary source for this. You became the new expert. So I can only imagine so many people, especially when confronted with your new ideas, feeling literally the same way as you or I do nowadays, because they want a source.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, this is it. I'm pointing at myself.
Yeah. Usually, and this is gonna put forward something that I'm gonna put forward a pet peeve.
Yeah.
I can be a valid source for certain things, but here's something that I think a lot of people need to hear. That a lot of artists out there will use this idea of, turning to, and again, I'm gonna air quote this bitch, science. They're looking looking to give their efforts some bona fides, or they're looking to increase the weight of their opinion in certain matters.
Yes.
By calling back to this science or that science and presenting themselves as some science expert.
Yeah.
I just would like to say, and includes myself as well, these artists are not scientists.
Oh my God. That's
tattooing. I know some artists out there will sneak doctor into their, they may have a PhD in something, but not in the arena with which they're arguing.
Yeah.
I had one guy, this is no shit, this is not an exaggeration. I had one guy argue with me about something I can't even remember what it was, but he dropped the PhD. He dropped the PhD bomb. He says, well, I have a PhD. Do you have a PhD? And I was like, no, I do not have a PhD. I'm just looking to learn where I might be wrong here. But this guy was grossly wrong. Then, when this guy had left the conversation, I remember, I'm gonna look up why this guy was so adamant about dropping this PhD thing. And we were probably talking about like art or something. It had to be something like neuroscience, art related, or something, And he had a degree, but his degree was in, and not to knock this field of study, but it just wasn't applicable. His degree was in hotel management. And first of all, I didn't know you could be a doctor of hotel management. I don't know where he had gotten,
Arizona
where he was
online.
awarded this. But yeah, there's a bunch of people that come across as, Dr. So-and-so.
Yeah.
But their degree has nothing to do with art or, anything that we're really talking about. But my point is, that doesn't even necessarily mean, I've met people with PhDs that were wrong about things. And
absolutely.
I myself, who do not have a PhD, have been wrong about a lot of things. And just because someone has letters after their name, now I'm not saying, that you should trust the word of experts all the time.
Oh, yes.
Get vaccinated, people. Trust science, trust the sciences. But because somebody that may have a PhD in chemistry that may be telling you, hey, you should paint like this because it's science, that's nonsense.
It doesn't make any sense.
So that's a big pet peeve of mine. So these people
that's fucking great.
It's great that people, it actually makes the job for people like you and me harder.
Yes.
When people are out there trying to say, well, I have a PhD, so my opinion on this unrelated thing in the field that you're actually working means more than you. Means more than your opinion.
Yeah, I've never got that. It's like, they're relying on people being ignorant of the fact of how academia actually works, right? Because when you
Correct.
get to a PhD, it's so niche. It's not like I have a PhD in chemistry. No, I have a
Or hotel
PhD on
management.
hotel management.
Yeah.
I have a PhD in chemistry with a specialty or focus in, where that focus in artificial photosynthesis. Dr. John, if you're listening, what's up? That doesn't mean that he's going to understand anything about, like, I don't know, particle physics or some shit,
Yeah.
right? It's not congruent. So make sure, yeah. I hate that. I've had that happen a few times actually.
It's unfortunate because like I've heard some people that like talk about their approach to color. Well, my approach to color is more scientific than yours. Newsflash, you're not doing science. Okay.
Science is a process,
Like
not an
right
institution.
now, if your approach to color involves you being in a lab coat with a lot of machines that I can afford and someone has a Nobel Prize on the wall, you may be doing science.
Yes.
But if those things aren't happening, you're not doing science.
No, it's not an investigation. You're asked questions.
Yeah.
And you try to return a null hypothesis. You're not trying to prove anything. You're trying to disprove what your hypothesis is from the start.
You're trying to disprove the null with your alternative hypothesis.
That's it. And if it comes back, whatever it comes back, it doesn't matter. The data is to be interpreted and released without any type of bias. That's science.
Yeah. Painting, the people, the colors that they decide to put on their palette, again, not doing science.
I like how this just keeps rolling back to subjectivity at the beginning. These are the rules and conventions of things that we're going with. It's it's frustrating. I get to see it every day in tattooing, and it's frustrating. That's I honestly gotta say that's my pet peeve as well. And I guess in tattooing the equivalent would be likes, followers, subscribers, right?
Yeah.
Or awards, which mean nothing anymore. Like, I mean, you can buy subscribers. Any convention that you go to nowadays, especially if you go to a small regional one, you can win an award like that, right? And so there's all these like trigger words and branding that are attached to people and how they do stuff, rather than actually just like coming up and being able to not only just explain why you're doing what you're doing, but also have the patience to try and help someone else understand why you're doing what you're doing.
Let me ask you a question. So this is again going all the way back to your what I find like is like a fascinating approach to your craft.
My method,
your method.
Air quoting again.
Oh my God, so many,
so many.
If too bad the video didn't air, because we should definitely have an air quote counter.
I'll put this up on the YouTube if you want. We can do that. I'll put it up at the bottom. Bing, right?
Yeah.
Fucking there's another
air quote. Yeah. No. You shouldn't put this video up. No one wants to look at me. I think I definitely have a face for radio that's somewhere that's like, the sloth from Goonies was merged with a foot. So I'm good. I'm good.
You kind of do look like Mike Batusak, but before the makeup.
No one wants this on a video.
I've heard
it's
that
fine.
you have an imposing physicality.
I'm
people.
Yeah, I'm a very big man. Yeah.
That's what happens in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
You got that dude running for, was it governor or something? He's a big dude too.
Yeah, no, I'm 6'8", and I'm 6'8", about 260.
That's right. It's about the size of my uncle.
Yeah, I'm a big boy.
Every one of my family's Norwegian. They're all tall. I'm half Irish, so I'm short. I'm 6'1". Everyone else is huge. I go to the family reunions. One side's all the Irish people getting drunk. The other side of the Norwegians talking about vacations. And about halfway through, the Irish people are like, you know what? I think we can fucking take those big folks.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Back to what I was saying. So with your method, do you find that when you were saying like, you could go to a convention and win an award so easily?
Yes.
This is a two-parter, and I'm curious what people would think about this.
Yeah.
Number one, do you feel that certain people we the quality of our work, the way an audience would view the quality of a work, whether it's a tattoo or whether it's a painting. There is a consideration of provenance. Like, oh, this painting was done by this really well-known person. So as though like it would be, I mean, you probably pay more money for it. And, you know, it comes with a little bit of bragging rights, you know, like, hey, look, this is
absolutely. Yeah.
Let me put you on the spot here.
Yeah.
Do you think in certain situations that you may have seen, now it's not a hypothetical, asking that you may have seen that an award may have been given because of the pomp and whatnot that
Oh, absolutely. Yes, 100%.
Where if it was anonymous, they would not have won that award.
100%. Yes. Like numerous times.
Yeah. I mean, that it's that you see that in the fine arts,
everything.
You know.
It's was it Stephen King? You did that initially, right? Because he became such a famous author as he started the nom de plume, right, and started to release books to see if he was any good, and he was just good. They sold, right?
Yeah.
And then somebody found out his name. There's a big what to do about it or whatever. But like that was the idea, right? That we used to have to test. If we were competing with ourselves, you would have to literally compete with yourself. You'd have to release something from something under a pseudonym, do this and that, and bring something up so that you could see, like, is this just because of who I am perceived by the public or because of my actual technical ability? And we don't have that anymore. You know, that's gone.
So this is just, I want to get to the second half of that question. So
Ink Master returns for an all-new season on its new home, Paramount Plus. On September 7th, host Joel Madden is joined by judges Nico Hurtado, Ami James, and Ryan Ashley, and guest star Dave Navarro as the Master of Chaos. As legendary artists go head-to-head for the title, stream the new season of Ink Master September 7th exclusively on Paramount Plus. Head to ParamountPlus.com to try it free.
In your case, with your particular methodology, you find the diversity of your output then, does that make placing in some type of award scenario much more difficult? Because it would seem then that the provenance, the visible provenance, like we would say, might be inherent in an obvious branding in a tattoo. If that's not visible, do you feel that hurts you in that capacity? Or rather, I shouldn't say hurt you, but put you at a disadvantage.
I guess, to be honest, like, I've never tested it, and I'm looking at this. I'm trying to look at this from the outside in. If inside out, I would never test it because it's not my tattoo at that point in time, right? So I would never take someone up to do
your philosophy deems that to be the case at that point.
Yeah. But like, thinking of it, if I were to have had a tattoo by me and I felt so inclined as to go and show it and hope to win, and this actually has happened twice. When I was reported about whatever award had been won, it wasn't mine. I refused to take it. And I've also been contacted by individuals about publishing names, doing things like that. And I've refused to sign off on having my person published. I refused to, because it's not mine. It's not my problem. And it wasn't all my work, right? Without them, without their effort. And I do homework with every client. Like, we have, before we even start the design process, we have 10 to 20 hours of homework that they must complete before we even get into it. Like, this is their work as much as mine. And so the provenance we could directly apply to both people, but in the world of art specifically, there's never room for two names on a plate unless there's a mixed media of some sort that's going into it. You know what I mean?
There's one more thing I'd like to ask you about your method that, again, I find interesting, that, you know, this may be, you know, very applicable to a lot of your listeners that are professional tattooers. What I have found doing commission work over the years is that a lot of times when I am so fortunate as to be chosen, you know, to help realize someone's intention, which kind of puts me on similar footing as you. And in doing that, I find that a good amount of the time when people are pulling from their long-term memory, your long-term memories really incredibly imprecise. It's very, very amorphic, you know, which is why, you know, when you dream and hey, this is my grandmother's house, but it's also the grocery store and the church I went to as a kid.
Oh my gosh.
Also somehow it's a pair of shoes as well. And like this makes perfect sense, you know, when because we just have this crazy imprecise very amorphous long-term memory. And a lot of times when people are describing what they want, they're pulling from this source that's difficult to realize. You know, it's difficult to kind of get through those weeds of like imprecision. To help realize. And you hear some people kind of dismiss this, and they'll say, well, a designer might say, well, people tend to not really even know what they want.
Yes, I hear that often. Yeah, in the industry.
And I think this is kind of a very generalized description of this reality of that when people are pulling from an idea. And I've had some people contact me and say, hey, I would like you to do this. And just with my experience, I'm able to say to them, I know what you're trying to get at, and the way you're describing this and the way you think it's going to work, that's not what it's going to look like. I could mock this up for you and explain to you, and I do. I'm very happy to go through that process, even if someone ends up not pursuing the commission. It's a cool exercise to show somebody, say, hey, look, this is why this wouldn't work.
Yes.
I understand the spirit of what you want to use
the empathy of what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I get it. I get what you're saying, but the manifestation of this is not going to be what you want based on the variables that you're putting forward right now.
So
now,
I got you.
Is that with your methodology? Is that a greater challenge for you, or because of their level of participation and homework, like you put it, is your particular method perhaps more advantageous in that realm? Having I guess it would depend on the homework that you're giving them.
Everything is tailored to each person individually, of course, but there's like a rough rubric that we go through all this stuff.
So do you think you get through those weeds of what someone wants more effectively with your current philosophy?
If I were to compare it to what I was doing like a decade ago, absolutely 100%. But there's limitations to everything. There's you probably know this as well, but there's like different types of people, right? There's visually, auditorily, or like touch sensitive or intuitive people, and how they interpret the world is always going to be funneled through a specific type of reflex in that space, right?
That's you might want to check the validity of that.
So we always filter it through this one, right? Let's say that you come home and you've had a rough day at work, and you sit down and you're going to do X to relax. How do you do that? Do you read a book? Do you put on the TV and just not look at it and zone out? Right? Do you have to have somebody give you a massage? Because each one of those things is going to be a different type of stimulation side of your brain. It's going to cause a different type of release of different type of hormones that are going to cause your body to go into a certain type of state. Right? So if you think about that as a relaxing state, when I'm trying to find a way for people to get over a specific hump or trying to interpret something in a different way, I'll try to use some type of key or trick like that to help them just relax their brain muscles, right? If they're not seeing things, and I think I had an instant image when you're asking this question about mixed perspectives. I want to have somebody underwater looking at somebody on shore, but I want to be seeing over their back the person in the water.
Yeah, Ryan, that's a perfect example. Perfect.
Right. And so it's this amorphous, like you had said, right? Like interpretation
in their mind, right? it makes sense because it's living in a realm of imprecision.
Exactly. Right. So what we usually say with this is that the person is leading their idea through empathy. So rather than trying to construct an entire image in their head, which it seems like they're incapable of doing, what we try to do is get them to calm down in a specific way, right? To use the faculties that are available to their body and their feedback of how they're constructed specifically to get them to release, relax, and then come at the design from a much broader scope. What we try to do is open them up more instead of trying to funnel it down. Let's go towards the aesthetic principles of why this works for you. What point in time is this? How are we identifying this? Who are you in this? What, like, are you a bird in the sky? Are you down under the water? Like, let's try to actually build this scene before we start to populate the space. And then we just basically reverse engineer the intro, and then we build from that point forward with everything. And I'll say I'll just do the past year because it's going to take me probably too fucking long to try and mentally populate all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
In the past year, I've had 2 people specifically that stick out in my head that had a lot of difficulty in this sense. One of them, I got to a point where our communication wasn't as effective as it needed to be, and I was actually using it as a bit of a hypothesis test where maybe I can get this to work. Even though in my gut, the first time we talked, I'm like, I don't think that this is going to work out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wasted some time with that stuff. I still was able to impart enough knowledge on them that they felt confident moving forward to the next person that they were going to contact to do the work, that they had more control and understanding of what they wanted to get. So I felt like I accomplished something in that way. The other person, it took us about 9 months of work, back and forth, an hour every week or two, talking, more homework, building stuff, until, like, in my mind, if somebody isn't understanding where I'm coming from, it's not because they don't understand me or maybe they're wrong. It's usually because I probably have had more experience, or I interpret things in a very specific way that is alternative to how they do. So I'm trying to make our brains meet halfway.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll spend a lot of time doing that, like trying to really understand where they are, and then like try to get them to understand where I am. And like that mixed perspective problem, it's to try and get them to see that it's impossible. Once it's impossible and they understand that, then it's easy to move forward. But if they're visually acuitive people and they have no real ability to like picture something in their mind, right? It's like somebody who, when they read a book, they can't say the words in their head. They have to say it out loud. You have to be able to lead them through that space so that they can understand that
Just real quick, when you're reading, do you mouth words or no?
No.
I know several people that do that, and
My
it's
son
funny.
does.
When they're sitting and reading something, I could probably if I work at it, if I couldn't see what they were reading,
yeah. My son does that. He has no internal monologue.
That would be a really
Anyways.
cool. I don't know if wherever this is posted, if there's anyone that could comment on stuff, but I'd be, if there's some feedback that people wouldn't mind giving, that's something I'd be curious about. How people, the process that they use for having a client realize get through those weeds of like the idea that they're starting with, I'm very interested in the different strategies that people use to help a client.
I keep meticulous notes. I could take you through an entire, like, I could take you through 3 people specifically. Like, I don't even care for recording. Like, if you wanted to see, I could show you some of the stuff that we do about how to open people up and pull them back down, just like that. And I will say, I'm not saying that I've got this fucking mastered at all. This is absolutely a work in progress with stuff.
We're all a work in progress.
But it's been, because I'm testing it every day. I tested it 43 fucking times this week. I'm so goddamn tired.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because it relies so much on you being able to identify the individual. And I know, like, some of the terms I may use may be abstract at best, or maybe they're leaning on some other type of like foundational thing that I've just like coined myself and like bending or lending off of others. But like how, at least like I describe it through mine, it all relies on empathy, because when you get to somebody who's in the weeds, I found, at least in my experience, the majority of those people are always leading with a feeling of what the design should be rather than an actual visualization of what it should be. And this is like you had said, there's those times and spots, those amorphous points in time where they're trying to draw things in. And it's almost like you have to take them back there and be like, what's up with this? I have a guy right now, his homework is to travel to the super remote lake that he was describing from his childhood. And he literally, I was just like, find that spot that you want and take a picture.
Because what is that? What is that part? there's like a geocaching
Yeah,
treasure hunt they
totally,
have
right?
to do. Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, geocache this spot, right?
Yeah.
He's like, that sounds great. I should do that. I'm like,
Yeah.
that'll be great because once you get there, you can put yourself back. I don't know what your experience is, but you can put yourself in that spot. If you can't put yourself in that spot, maybe we can use some type of other sense, right? Smell, sight, sound, whatever.
It's
right?
amazingly fascinating. It's amazingly fascinating that you're putting so much time and effort into really cultivating this really comprehensive experience for your clients. I mean, that's
trying to. A lot of people call me insane, but that works too.
Well, I mean, yeah.
You can just do the art, Ryan. Like, you know how to draw. Like, yeah, I know. But it's not about that.
Yeah,
like
I just, I would also just really quick, I'd like to take a minute just to give, if I'm allowed to give a shout out on something like this.
Absolutely.
I would like to give a big shout out to the place that did all my tattoos here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, do it.
Corey Pogue at the Proxima Artist Collective in Kingston, and there's another artist there that's really incredible, Donovan White. It's an incredible. So anyone in Pennsylvania, it's the amazing artists.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful place. These are very skilled. Very, very skilled technicians that work there. So that's the one tattoo shout out I did want to give.
That's great. Yeah. CoreyPogueTattooing.com. Check them out. You're outside of Wilkes-Barre?
Yeah, I technically share. I'm in Bear Creek Township, but we share the zip code with Wilkes-Barre. And a lot of people don't know where that is. I say, if you've ever seen The Office, the show The Office, that's like 20 minutes north where that's supposed to be. So
northeastern Pennsylvania. Yeah,
we're northeastern Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Pass through. You can tell I'm not from there, but I've got a bunch of Irish in me because we call it Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah.
That's great. Do we got you any longer, or do you got to go?
I have got to go take care of my dogs.
Right on.
Okay, that's our show for today. Thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to leave us a review, comments, all that stuff. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever your podcast player choice is. We would be very, very appreciative of it, as your reviews make us rank higher. And it turns out that we're ranking in the top 50 in Austria. You go, Austria. We love you. Next week, we're going to be talking to somebody who is a philosopher, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Have you ever wondered if there's a philosophical debate as to how you should interact with your clients if you're a tattooer or if you're a tattoo client? I know it sounds interesting, but trust me, the dude I'm talking to is just one of the best people on the planet. Anyways, I hope everyone has a good weekend. If you have any comments for us or any type of questions, feel free to reach out. Leave them at twodudestalktattoos@gmail.com. And until next week, have a rock and roll time.